Yeah, no, it's not a radio. Well, it does say on the channel that we can do things that aren't radios if I feel like it from time to time, and this has come into my possession recently. It's obviously a portable cassette recorder from 1982. It's a Philips thing, and I think it's a sort of tail end of this sort of thing, really. I used to have one of these things, and I think a lot of people had them in the 70s. And they were very popular sort of little cassette recorder. Most people's first cassette recorder looked like that, really. Um, by the 80s, these sort of standalone portable things had sort of fallen by the wayside, and you'd got more into people having radio cassette recorders, and then later on getting into the big sort of double cassette boombox type things where you could copy from one to the other. And these standalone things, as I said, were becoming less and less popular. And this one is actually, I mean, I've already done a bit of external cleanup on it. It's actually quite a solid piece of kit. It's got a nice action. You lift that, it doesn't sort of jump up. It says it's got a hydraulic eject. I'm not sure how hydraulic that really is. Probably means it's got a bit of oil on it, but it does seem quite nice. It's got a nice action there. Got volume, tone controls. It's got full auto stop. It's got a built-in microphone, and the other thing I notice about it is now Philips sets always had, being European-based stuff, always had the ubiquitous DIN connector where you had 5 pins and you had both input and output on the same and on different sides of that, and a cable that do both. Now they seem to have surrendered to more sort of international practice by this time and gone for 3.5mm jack sockets. The odd thing is it's got like in out here and then mic, radio, phone line. So I was a bit confused by that. So is it in or is it out? And it turns out that this one is actually in, and this one is in or out, so you can use it either way around. And then it's got a remote. I'm presuming there was a little remote switch that you could use for that, which is not with this and probably will never be found again. And why would you want it really? If it's a wired remote for a thing like this, I'm not sure what the usage of it will be. Anyway, it can either take a load of batteries or it can take the mains. I'm going to plug the mains into it, just to save me finding a load of batteries. So let's have a listen to it.
Boys, said the barn dance announcer George Akers, old iron pants, one day. Boys, he said, the days of radio are numbered. Old Price is trying to tell us. The boys laughed. Radio in decline. This was 1937. When you were in radio, you owned the world. Men moved aside for you. Beautiful women smiled up at you. Doors opened. And as you slipped through, you heard people whisper your name.
Those were the days, eh? So that's it on playback. Let's try recording something with it and see how that sounds. This gives us a chance to also see how the rewind and wind fast forward work. And they seem to be pretty good generally. It's doesn't feel as if the belts are slipping or anything bad like that. I didn't hear, I mean it was speech so it's harder to hear while I'm fluttered, but it didn't sound too bad on that. I haven't put a test tape on it yet. So let's get back to the beginning of this. And we can do the old time-honoured thing that everybody used to do, can't we? Where you get the cassette out, and obviously you've got the leader tape here, so you can't record on that. So what you have to do is stick a pencil in it and turn it round and round and round until you get the first bit of oxide there. And make sure it's tightened up so it doesn't all spill out and get chewed up. Let's put it into record. We'll put the pause on, record and play like this, and yeah, let's try recording something, shall we? What shall we record? I don't know. We better find something to record first, haven't we?
the Bee Gees as they were, or maybe sort of as they could have done, didn't do a stripped back version of it themselves. But I suppose that wasn't their bag, was it?
Let's see what that sounds like.
The Bee Gees as they were, or maybe sort of as they could have done, didn't do a stripped back version of it themselves. But I suppose that wasn't their bag, was it?
No, I mean, maybe they did think of that. Maybe it was.
So it sounds quite tinny, I suppose, quite light on the bass. Now the other thing I'm going to try and do is see if I can record something via the input socket there. So I'm going to bring some radio signal up and try and record that.
You know, when teams face Man City, playing for Man City, it's a lot different. You know, teams tend to be camped in, denying space.
Okay, let's try stopping that and going back. And see what we get. Okay, here we go.
Denying space, not a lot of, ways through to the game, and it takes time. But I agree with Pat. Give him a year on the pet. Learning.
So that seems to work. What else can we try? I suppose we could try getting something back out of it and into the system and see if that works. So I'm just going to try doing that. I'm going to bring it in through the. So I'm just going to re-plug this to another channel now. I think. Rewind that.
When teams face Man City, playing for Man City, it's a lot different. Teams tend to be camped in.
I was expecting that this would be dependent, that would be a line output that's not dependent on the volume control, but it seems like it is. So So that's unfortunate, really, in that the output there, I would expect that to be a line level output not affected by these. I would expect the speaker output on the side definitely to be affected by what you do with these, but that seems a bit wrong. And I haven't tried going in through the other input, and that presumably is much more sensitive, and if I'm not careful recording from that, I'll probably overload it. The strange thing is that there's not really much in terms of any feedback. I'm pretty certain the older one, if you look back at that picture of the old EL302 or whatever, 3302 or whatever, the 1960s, 70s version, did actually have a rudimentary level meter where you could tell whether you're overloading it. So again, I just wonder if they're beginning to strip features out of these things by this time on the grounds that they thought not many people wanted them. It's a shame, because how much would it have cost to have had a sort of little meter on there? Probably not very much. And spoils what is otherwise, I think, pretty well-built set. Also, the speaker, as I said, it seems a bit under-spec'd, really. I don't have a DIN connector for this speaker. So they'd retained the DIN connector for the speaker, despite having removed it for the... so you'd think they'd have just had a 3.5 jack headphone connector there. You probably, the difficulty is you need the actual plug to go in there, so that will disconnect the speaker. I think what we might do is take it apart and connect another speaker across and see if it makes any difference. Okay, let's get our dismantling hat on. So I've taken the mains out, which is pretty important if you're going to take your thing apart. Take the cassette out. I think we'll also have to take off these two control knobs. So we'll no doubt be holding it in from the front. And then there are a number of flathead screws. Can you quite see those there? Yeah, a number of flathead screws in various places. That isn't one of them, but here, here, and here, and here, that hold it together. Flathead screws are odd choice for this sort of period. They mostly would have used crosshead screws, I'd have thought, so I'm not sure why they did that. Also, for the screw geeks among us, of course, we all know that what's known as the Phillips screw is a type of crosshead screw, but the more common type of crosshead screw is ever so slightly different, and it's called a posi drive. And strictly speaking, the two types of screwdriver, the screwdrivers are not interchangeable for those screw heads. And the other fun fact is that this is a Phillips set, so why do they not use Phillips screws? The answer is that the Phillips that invented the Phillips screw was a completely different person from the Phillips that invented Phillips electronics. So he was an American gentleman, not a Dutch one. So there you go. There's some interesting fun facts we can talk about while you're waiting for me to unscrew this thing. And all the screws fall out. And one of them is longer than the others. I think it's that one. Now there's two more screws out. So again, looking at it disassembled, I think it's get me the right way up. I think it's generally pretty high quality. It needs a bit of dust blowing out, I think, so I think that's the next thing to do. As you can see, it's got a bit dusty around here and various other places, and perhaps a little bit of grease has built up. The motor's pretty nice motor mounting there. A lot of the audio functionality, the amplifier, is in this chip here. Yeah, there's not much to look at. I think what we'll do actually is, as I said, we'll try and put a different speaker on, just stick a different speaker in, see if it makes any difference, or at least across it. I haven't got another speaker, I don't think, that will fit into that mounting. I just want to know whether it's worth getting hold of one and seeing if that can improve it. Right, let's do some dust busting. Whoa! I seem to have blown a label off it somewhere. I'll go and fetch that back eventually. That's cleaned it up quite a bit, I think, and hopefully hasn't blown any important parts out of the way. I think what I might do in this case is go for sticking batteries in it, so as to avoid having to plug the mains in while we're working on it like this, and then I'm not susceptible to pushing my finger into a wrong place and ending this excellent video series prematurely. Run it with batteries with the top off is easier said than done, because there's nothing to hold those in place there. So how well that works, I'm not sure. I'm going to put the pre-recorded set back in and see if it still works. Hopefully it does. Obviously you've not got any location in there from the normal lid, so how well that works I'm not sure, and I can't tell which is the play. I think it's that one, right. No, that's fast forward.
Skipper. Cowboy Chuck poured himself a stiff drink of Vince-made root beer and spat on the barroom floor and said, "I come from St. Paul, Minnesota, city full of angry, maudlin Irishmen, flabby, chinless men with limp mustaches waving their shriveled members at the cruel blue sky."
Well, we'll leave the today's Easter Saturday lesson there, and I'm going to try and put a different speaker in and see if that improves the sound. Right, well, I've now hooked up my generic test speaker that I keep this around and I use it for testing various radios when I don't want to get the speaker out of the case or whatever. I just use this I just keep this around for testing stuff. So I've hooked this up to it, and it's a fairly good speaker. Let's have a listen. I've also taken the opportunity to swap to a slightly more wholesome piece of text, because I felt the previous one was getting a little bit racy, and we may fall foul of censorship guidelines. So let's go for something a little more cultural.
I remember the house where I was born, the little window where the sun came peeping in at morn. He never came a wink too soon, nor brought too long a day, but now I often wish the night had borne my breath away.
Well, I think that sounds a bit better, and it would sound, I suspect, even better with the box closed. This particular one, I don't think is going to fit in here. I need to find a speaker that fits there properly. But you know, this one, because it's so deep, I don't think it'll fit. I don't know. Let's just have a quick measure here. I think it will fall foul of this lot and get also. I'm a bit. This magnet is so huge that I'm sort of rather worried about getting it too close to that. But I think a better speaker might improve things. And looking at the circuit diagram does confirm that the feed for that output socket there does come after the volume and tone controls, which is really annoying. I don't know why they did that. Surely it would have been better off to put that back here. The volume control is quite early on in the piece by the looks of things. It goes before the main amplifier chip, which I suppose it would, but there's a sort of transistor stage here. Perhaps they could have taken it from there, or perhaps there's not enough voltage at that point. I don't know.
To Autumn by John Keats. Season of mists and mellow fruitfulness, close bosom friend of the maturing sun, conspiring with him how to load and bless with fruit the vines that round the thatch eaves run.
Yeah, I think this is actually quite a nice piece of kit, really. And it's a shame that it's got a couple of flaws, like not a brilliant speaker and possibly could have had a better way of getting the audio out of it for playing back somewhere else. But I'm going to persist with it. I think I will try and find a better speaker for it, and I will see if I can do some modifications to the circuit to improve that slight flaw. But otherwise, I quite like it. We'll come back to this perhaps in a future video to see how I get on.